Welcome to this episode of TAC Tik Talk. I'm your host, Dr. Joe Busch, editor of the American Chiropractor magazine, along with Jaclyn Touzard, publisher. Today we are joined by Dr. Curtis Martin. Dr. Martin is well-renowned and well-regarded across the United States, specifically in the West Coast. I understand you have several practices, successful practices that you work with your wife and have grown over the years. Dr. Martin, welcome to the program. Can you tell the audience a bit about yourself, your background, and what brings you here today?
Yeah, thank you so much. And it's a real pleasure to speak to you guys today. And my background is that I started 3 offices in Northern California, been in practice coming up on 28 years. And traditionally, I was a chiropractor that was more hands-on corrective care family practice with a big emphasis of wellness and prevention. And then after that, I got into, and I can certainly tell later in the podcast, my story, which was really a miracle in itself. But it was what introduced me to shockwave therapy, and that was my first modality I had. And then I started getting into more regenerative energies and looking at sound wave and light wave and all the different things that resonate with the body, and just had profound outcomes with the patients. So that's when I dove really deep and really started to teach and start to implement and help other doctors across the nation do the same thing, introduce new modalities to change outcomes in practices.
That's fascinating. I mean, I know that it's, the hands are a great tool, but sometimes you can't get the full recovery. And I had the honor to actually get treated my knee by you recently at a seminar there. Now, you're not just a normal diversified adjusting chiropractor, from my understanding and what you were sharing with me there. You apply certain different types of approaches like muscle testing. You had an activator that you were using on us.
Yeah.
Talk about that and how that can influence your treatment using these modalities.
Yeah. And I think the core principle is in chiropractic, there's a lot of different techniques. And so in order to read the body, what I got into was just looking at, like, applied kinesiology was my first testing, just more of a tonal technique. And that's where I see that what really got me to the next level chiropractically to start off with before I got into modalities was understanding and committing to a tonal technique to read the nervous system, to know what it needs, where it needs it, was so important. And then I've used that technique, the same thing, because you can muscle test into nutrition products, decompression. There's a lot of things you can just ask the body and it'll tell you. So I use that as far as my foundational treatment. And then from that, then springboard into high level diagnosis. That's where my training comes in. Is I love training doctors on how to get to that root cause of what's causing that knee pain, and then having the right modality to reach in and actually address those tissues, remove that interference, and allow the body to heal itself from the inside out.
So the device you're using now, we've all tried the shockwave. Most people in the audience, maybe not everyone, but which is an acoustic wave, which helps to kind of create this interference with the soft tissue around there. You had this different device, which I don't think I've ever seen before. It was the Hydrowave magnetohydraulic shockwave device. And so it's not only an acoustic wave, and it's not I didn't feel it as painful or intense, but apparently it's penetrating much deeper than a typical. So can you talk about that? What's the technology there?
The hydrowave, and it's good because it's kind of interesting when you talk about magnetohydraulic. That's more of I would call it more of a slang name for what it is. And we see that. I've seen shockwave being called stem cell machines and all that kind of stuff that you see on doctor show. But truly, it's a technology to get to the point where, because there's always someone in the audience probably going to listen to this and say, what is this device? What is the technical part? And really what it is, to give you the technical part, because it does stand heads and tails above most machines, and because it is an electrical magnetic device inside the box, so to speak, in a water medium, hydraulic medium. That's the technology. In shockwave, there's every type of shockwave. We could go through 20 different companies, but it all boils down to 2 specific types of technology: either pressure wave or acoustic wave. And I do this with my fingers because pressure wave is more superficial, acoustic wave is deeper. Well, what they did with this device was with Hydrowave is they blended the two technologies together. So it is a sound wave, it is a pressure wave that comes out in the end of the probe, but it allows us very special harmonizing energy that goes into the cells. I've never seen it before in shockwave. And it does like three amazing things. It will triple the amount of blood flow. And this is the part most shockwaves don't talk about, but it's equally as important about cell signaling as the getting rid of the damaged cells. And we call that the senescent cells. We call that the age cells, the cells that are damaged, that are just sitting there from that injury. They're ready to go away. It addresses those cells. It helps them to be recycled in the body. So it really supports the lymphatic system. Lymphatic system is so important for um, just to get rid of the dead cells and regeneration. New cells coming in, old cells going out. And a third thing it does is it activates the exosomes in the cell. So what it does is it squeezes a cell, the exosomes are cleaved, your endogenous stem cells that are always circulating in the body are activated and migrated to that tissue and become through the immune system whatever it needs. If your body needs more ligament, more tendon, more muscle, more bone, more nerve sheath, more cartilage, it'll deliver that. And that's why it's so special, is because it really is just it goes back to our chiropractic principles, Dr. Joe. And when I say that, it just goes back to the body has the ability to heal itself from the inside out. And all we're doing is cell signaling the body to go there.
Right. Well, we know DD was a magnetic healer back in the day, right? So, I mean, he would have definitely had one of these in his clinic, I think. But you're talking about enhancing blood flow now. How have they? How can you identify that that's happening? I mean, how is there a way that that can be shown, or that someone who's using this device would say, well, right here's the information on that.
Yeah, the most of the information, if you go to the International Shockwave Association, there's a 2023 article that they have put a lot of money into research about shockwave and shockwave as an industry, and it showed that the angioneogenesis happens with multiple different devices using sound wave. But it's a common philosophy and principle. But I think where this one comes in special is because it's a focused LI, low energy ESWT. That focused energy is what you said earlier, Doc,
Hmm.
was it was less painful. And it's because it's not pushing a big column of energy. It's very narrow. And that's why it was interesting. I was getting some peptides injections about 2 weeks ago, and the gauge of the needle was like a 25 gauge needle, and they didn't have any smaller 32 gauge needles. And I go, oh, it'll be fine. And I was like, I got poked with this 25 with this peptide, and go, ow! I was like, ooh. So pushing more columns, fatter things into the body are more painful. When they put the 32 gauge, sub Q needle in, it was like, oh, it felt like a mosquito bite. So that's the really the principle, if you will, why this is more pain free. And I've used other devices, and sometimes their pain levels get to a 6 out of 10 while the person's getting the care. This one on average is about 3 out of 10, which feels less than a like a gentle stretch. And it's like, and I love that because I'm sure you said DD. I'm sure that our chiropractic founding fathers would always say, you know, get a very specific treatment with the least amount of pain with the patient always allows them to return and get further care. And hopefully they utilize this type of energy in our offices for their lifetime.
Right. Well, you sound kind of like a mixer. You don't sound so straight if you're doing peptides on your own. So, I mean, which that's one of these innovative treatments that are coming online. Do you have a nutritional protocol that you also recommend for a type of patient doing this type of therapy?
Yeah, it's nutrition is the building blocks of the body needs, and that's especially true with certain cases. So when we do the proper consultation and take a good health history, well, there's a lot of people that are going to be compromised in their healing, and that's where we step in with our nutritional protocols for those.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Okay.
you have to. Otherwise, the body's only good at healing as the person is.
So, Dr. Martin, all right, this is a new device. It's recently come onto the market. I think we've seen it for the last 6 months. How would you relate that machine to other, like, say, I mean, because some of these shockwave devices you can probably buy on Amazon for like $1,000. It's
Yeah.
like little kind of like hydraulic pump thing. Is it like that? I mean, I'm trying to explain to the audience who's out there and trying to conceptualize this. I used some electromagnetic type things in the clinic here in the past.
Yep.
PEMF we've used. I mean, is there any? effect of the magnet, and that's causing this pulse, or just describe the technology
Yeah.
behind it a little bit.
So maybe we could just unpack this a little bit, because what you said was so true. And I get people that come in and say, Dr. Martin, I saw on Amazon a shockwave device. And that's the thing, is like there's literally hundreds. You can go from $1,000 for a device up to $90,000.
Hmm.
I've seen devices, and go well over that. And it's because of the energy they use is one thing, but also what really, there's two things when you look at shockwaves that, and this is helpful for your entire base, is when you ask what shockwave they have, you want to ask these two questions. The two questions are, what is the depth of penetration at maximum, you know, volume, so to speak, and then also, what is the millijoules of energy? Because when you read all the different literature on shockwave across the country and across the world, it always goes back to the unit of energy, millijoules per millimeter squared. If you understand that and you look at some of the literature, like the 2023 International Shockwave Association article, which you can punch up on Google, you'll see a therapeutic zone. And that therapeutic zone is really where that device has to reach for that body part. So what that means, doc, is that if, let's say, you have an ACL sprain inside your knee, right? Let's say
Hmm.
you're playing soccer, you turned and that thing is sprained and it's swollen and it's limp. It's when you look at the anatomically how deep it is, maybe it's 2.5 inches deep if you have a pretty thick knee. But your device that maybe you got off Amazon only reaches a half an inch. There's no possible way you're going to make any kind of difference on it. So then we say, well, we're kind of in a good discussion now, is like, well, what machine can actually reach it? And then if you want patient retention, people coming back to see you, you want it to be fairly comfortable. When I say comfortable, if the patient's screaming, ow, 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 it's killing me, they're not coming back, because we're in a society where, well, this was a lot was in Germany, but they say no pain, no gain. I would disagree and say in the United States, there's very few people that say no pain, no gain. Most people want it to be comfortable. So if you can reach the tissue with the right millijoules of energy, plus make it comfortable to the patient, to me, those are the three boxes that everyone's looking for. And fortunately, in Shockwave, I'll just tell the way it is, you kind of get what you paid for.
Mhm.
And
Hmm.
then when you get what you pay for to reach those decibels, then you got to look into, once you find a machine, there's a several of them. There's probably about 5 machines that could reach that depth of penetration. Then you got to analyze each one of those machines for the pluses and minuses, such as refurbishments, such as, is it painful? Does the company give good service? What happens if something breaks? You can start to vet these companies, and that's why that with Hydrowave, I've really been impressed by all those different markers, and that's why I've used every type of machine that's out there.
Mhm.
And this one stands heads and tails. And I had a doctor yesterday called me and said they were looking at one of the competitors, and they looked at this one. I go, what you need to do is go try it and get a treatment by both machines
Mhm.
for your problem, and then go back and forth and say, wait till 72 hours, because that's the marker. So don't get it like as soon as you got off the table. When I treated you, Dr. Joe, I was like, okay, well, hold on. But when you take both machines and you look at 72 hours later, which is a cell cycle, that's the heartbeat of usually a cell turnover, that's when you can really say, what did it truly do?
Right. Yeah, and that's the thing, right? You were talking about, does it hurt? But also, what you're saying here. There's a lot of reminiscence of even the laser approach, right? They're measuring the joules, the power penetration. Some of
Yep.
those lasers you don't even feel, and so the patient feels like they didn't get anything. It's like it's the patient psychology, from a
Totally.
practitioner perspective. When we're trying to just, but feeling something, the patient knows right away that something happened, right? But you and
It's
I, with this kind of science orientation, also trying to do so much at the same time with it. That's what intrigued me about this device, was that electrical field that can be even provided based on the treatment, and being magnetohydraulic. That's why I thought it was important to emphasize that. Just the magnetic side, which is so poorly understood on
yeah.
its healing capacity. is just an opportunity really to administrate, right? So if you are at a seminar, you got to look for Dr. Martin. You
Yeah.
probably won't, there'll probably be a line, honestly, because either everyone knows him or just like he has an inviting way of being and everyone ends up on the table. But I would recommend you try it out.
Yeah.
Dr. Martin, I wanted to jump in and ask because you were talking so much about the technology and the technique, but let's get down to brass tacks because you're also specialists in helping doctors grow their practice. So, what are the dollars and cents look like? I mean, if you're using this, if a chiropractor wants to utilize it in their practice, what kind of economics do you see them? The hurdles they have to overcome to get to implement it, saying that they want to get on board with this one.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I'm happy to answer that. Yeah, the electromagnetic is a special technology, and my background too was I was lucky because before I started in, I like how you say that, a mixer. I was for 20 years I was just a straight chiropractor, just bone on nerve maintenance, and really had to pivot due to an injury I received and got stem cells and saved myself from back surgery. And this was one of the modalities that really help. So the good news is I've never needed back surgery, so it saved me from back surgery. So that's one of the reasons why I'm passionate about it. But what I truly do is that I look at like this is if we're not able to help them, they're down the road getting surgery. So it's critical for us to be able to be very good high level practitioners. And so my background is being practice management. I was asked to be a coach about 15 years ago. And I coached, hundreds of doctors and a lot of offices up to those higher amounts of $1 million practice. I think the one office I coached was up to $5 million annually per year. So I know a lot about how to monetize a technique, and part of it is that what I've seen for um, most modalities is when you buy a modality, then they go, "Great, you got it," and they show you a few, and then the people selling you the device says, "Oh, it's plug and play." Right? It's just easy. Just use all the patients. You'll have a lineup out the door, and that's just not the case. And so what I've done is I built a learning management platform that goes through everything from how to implement, how to practice it, how to do a good consultation, how to do a slide deck report of findings, how to convert them to maintenance, how to do a shockwave care class to educate and inspire and get them to refer other people. So I built this whole management platform, which is, I made it so a third grader could go through it. And as long as they spend the time, it makes it simple because it's if you have a complicated issue and you make it more complicated than what it is, and a lot of people that are really good at what they do, I just remember professors trying to over explain things. I'm like, no, just make it simple, a recipe, if you will. So we've done that. We've done basically a bot of me of doing hundreds of hours of presentations and teaching. So the bot can answer your clinical questions within 60 seconds on Slack. We have a community that you can ask other practitioners of what they're doing. So that's the other part. So it's platform, it's Slack, but also I teach an hour class on advanced protocols. So getting better results, the little gold nuggets, as I call it. And when we've done this, typically what we've seen is they've paid for the machine with this type of implementation within the first 90 days. That's all the doctor. I've trained over 100 offices currently that I've trained with Shockwave. All of them have paid for the device within 90 days. Some have paid them within the first week. My fastest one was they had prepaid plans that paid for their device in 1 week. And the numbers, when we talk about numbers, these aren't my numbers. These are the doctors that I've coached. Um, they've done significantly well. They've had well over $100,000 collected in their first launch, whether it's been, I call it slow, medium, or fast, in 30, 60, 90 days. It's very common for them to be collecting well over $100,000 within that time period if they follow the recipe, which
Mhm.
chiropractors, they have to get it through their thick head. No, don't do it your way. Do it the tried and true way. This is how you introduce it to your patients. This is how the plans go. This is how you do a good report of findings. And those types of things are so important. And Dr. Joe, I mean, how many times have you listened to a chiropractor that would show a patient an x-ray and say, this is your care you need, like doing, or this is your labs and here's your care. You have to have a lot more of a better presentation in order to deliver high level care build a patient that's going to be in your clinic that hopefully can be adding on to other services, because we have a lot of conversion if you're a multidisciplinary office and let's say you have decompression or nutritional protocol or HBOT. I do show you how to, you know, properly introduce other modalities that might benefit that patient. So that's where the monetization can be
Mhm.
huge. That this is really a springboard. It's a standalone, so it's not a blend into your services. It's definitely an add-on. But isn't it nice to be able to, you know, use all your services and give them everything that you have in your office the right way?
Mhm.
Well, we do attract that kind of chiropractor that likes to add on these types of modalities. So, does is this going to bog down the chiropractor? I mean, are they going to have to be there applying this, or how does that work?
Yeah, there's a couple different protocols that I teach with. It's more to do individually with the practitioner, which means
Mhm.
sometimes some doctors want to have an individual, if you will, department. Some want to be doing the service themselves. The good news in just about every state, there's two states that don't allow this, but the other 48 states, when you do the services, you can actually train a tech. And that's why we have a learning management platform to train the tech. So the doctor would diagnose what the problem is, you know, whatever it might be, show the tech what we need to treat. Let's say it's a rotator cuff or supraspinatus. Then the tech can actually do the care for the patient, which is pretty amazing. So this can be a non-doctor driven add-on for sure.
So, rotator cuff, like if you got a patient on there, what would a treatment plan look like for a rotator cuff using this type of? I mean, like, is it 30 minutes or
So the average amount with the we'll go back to Hydrowave, which is the electromagnetic device. With that one in water medium, that a rotator cuff, depending on the size of the diagnosis, which means either the depth of what we're treating and also the size of it, is it a big tear, small tear. We've done typically most of the time it'll be sub 10 minutes. It'll be usually less than 1,000 shockwaves, depending on which is pretty quick when you start delivering. And the hertz is the delivery method of how quick it is. It's usually about 6 minutes of treatment time, and the patient a couple minutes to get on the table and off the table. It's less than 10 minutes. And on average, mild, moderate, and severe conditions. And these are the protocol manuals. I have protocol manuals. I just finished my third protocol manual that teach 8, 10, or 10, 12 treatments with a frequency. So that's usually once or twice a week to complete a significant repair for that person. So that's why I think what we do so well is we have those protocol manuals that the doctor doesn't have to figure out. And yeah, I'm very proud of our protocol manuals because it's just the consistent outcomes that we've been able to generate.
Mhm.
now? I see that. What other types of technique did you get into? I saw like Nemo technique or some other. I mean, I think that we were even talking a little bit about acupressure. Have you kind of experimented with this using those types of approaches? You were commenting to me at least something on that.
No, it's a great. I've really with my protocol manuals. Um, I dove deep into this 5 years ago when I first started to like this February. Be 4 years. I've been. I call it a coach, but implementer, coach, however you want to put it, for Shockwave exclusively this February. Be 4 years. Prior to that, I had 2 years of just research to figure everything out, and it was always a quest of mine to not only get good results, but doc, I was like, can I get great results? And so we've been able to use everything from nutrition to we use reflex points to help engage the central nervous system if it's maybe needing that support. And we've patterned everything out, like how long to use it in a certain reflex point, what areas you want to start with first. Do you do one hand? Do you do both hands? Do you do both feet? There's a lot of science to it that I've been able to kind of refine over thousands and thousands of patients. So as we know, there's not a lot of NIH is not giving us a lot of money to do research. So really, these case studies, these linear cohort studies that I've done, has been case outcomes, and so that's why we kind of picked these things. Is we're not guessing. We've actually had between my core doctors, there's about 12 of them that we've been over the last 5 years working closely and treating hundreds of thousands of shockwave patients. We see those consistent outcomes, and then we said, okay, how can we make it better? And so we've had a recipe for that. That's why the protocol manuals is really the secret sauce in this whole thing. Instrument is good, and I think I told you this, Dr. Joe, is like I always look at the instrument. They're good, and there's a couple that are good. I think Hydrowave is the best for many reasons, which we talked about. But it's like a samurai. The device is like the sword. The training and the implementation is everything. Because if you're not a
Mhm.
trained samurai and you just have a samurai sword, you're nothing, right? So these devices won't learn themselves. You got to put in the time to train, and when you do, you will get patients with unbelievable miracles that happen. They're not even like good outcomes, like people decrease their pain. I've seen miracles happen, miracles. Like, and that's the type of, I don't know, if you will, energy,
Mhm.
vibration, I think that every doctor wants to have floating around their office.
Well, you want it in your community, man. You want them to, if if they're saying they had a miracle happen, it's definitely not going to hurt the waiting room, right?
No, not
So,
at all. And I think that helps monetize things, doesn't it?
mhm.
And how long is the training? You mentioned this. I saw that you like have some, how long does usually the training, do you think, just to get it up and running?
Yeah, usually the first we've had it all down to a kind of a science, and it is just like anything. The more you put in, the more you get out. But typically, in the first 90 days, it's about 3 hours of training every single week that is going to be on that learning management platform. After that 90 days, we have a certificate course that you can go through to make sure you're proficient at it. And after that's done, it's typically about an hour every single week for the remainder of a year. But when you train for a year on cellular research, cellular healing, which is not traditional in my career as being a chiropractor, nor some of the other doctors like medical doctors, and I was talking to an acupuncturist. Cellular healing is something that's very special, and you gotta know all the ins and outs of it. And it does, if you're going to get good at something, you got to put in the time. But 3 hours a week with proper training, really condensed so you can be very potent on what you do. And then after that, an hour a week for the rest of the year. I've had doctors that have been coaching with me this year, some of them with me for the 4 years, because we just continue to build in their education process.
Hmm.
Yeah, with
And then
regards to cellular healing, I think like the chiropractic education platform, all they do is just microbiology that you start to learn at seventh grade, and it's just like you got your organelles, your mRNA, you know what I mean? So, really studying that and emphasizing that and using that as a for outcomes is definitely a different approach. And with the stem cell orientation that you're talking about, the exosomes and whatnot,
Yeah.
activation.
Well,
Uh,
Well,
and
and miracle cases aside, which is always amazing, but at the same time, for practicality from the doctors, because when I hear the time, we can lose some people on this. So let's talk about the financial rewards then that they could expect. Like you'd mentioned, obviously paying off the thing within a
yeah,
time frame, so that it's worth it. They could understand, what kind of if you could explain a little bit more about the economics, because
yeah,
they need that motivation to get them over that hump of investing the time, right?
yeah. And maybe what I can do is like, there's always, I don't want to ever over promise and under deliver because that's never been my MO, but I can give you some numbers which will help kind of gauge some of the audience what they're listening to. But if you are a traditional chiropractor, and we'll talk about that too because I think that's important. I think Dr. Joe said that about cellular healing and stacking modalities, and I can definitely share with you some of those stacking modalities that work really well with shockwave. We just talked about shockwave, but there's a bunch of other things, nutritional and laser and vibration plate, things that stack well with this. Um, but when it comes to an average, if you're a practice um, considering shockwave, and let's say you're seeing um, somewhere in the neighborhood of, let's say, 250 to 300 visits a week, which that's a very good practice in most states. Even if you're in that range, let's say we'll go with 250. My statistics are is we take that practice and we show you how to implement it. We use a marketing company to get all the emails and how to promote this properly. And we build an interest list and we build the day one and day two. Typically, it's about 25% of those people will roll into a care plan. So if we use those numbers, just roughly, you'll have about 60 people out of 250 that will turn into patients, thereabouts. The average cost, depending on what state you're in, is anywhere from 1,600 to 2,400 for 10 visits. Let's say if we did put into the medium diagnosis, if we rounded $2,000, you could plan on in 90 days that you would go ahead and take that 60 patients, turn them into a $2,000 add-on plan, wherever they're going. So you're just using your existing patient base. That's 120,000. My biggest 1 month collections, if this helps, was well over 300,000 collected of prepaid money in the first month. I say that, I hesitated to even say those numbers, but since we're talking about monetizing, I think it's important. But he was a unicorn, which means he did it all himself, wanted to do the whole thing, was just going. But it can be a huge add-on once you're going through those 120, or 60 people getting care. We start using external and internal marketing campaigns. We blend both of them, so we're not relying on one or the other. The average that most of my clients of these 100 have launched is anywhere from 25,000 to 35,000 add-on shockwave money that's added into their practice. So that's anywhere from 300,000 closer to about 480, almost 500,000. There's always going to be the outliers, seeing a little bit less, to the ones that are doing over. I have one, the doctor's doing $110,000 a month in shockwave, but on average, those are the kind of numbers that I would expect, that if you have a good sized practice, those are the numbers we should be hitting every single month with the combination of external and internal marketing. So
Most chiropractors, they buy a new modality or treatment method, and they don't even know how to market it. So you guys, because they're just becoming familiar with it, right? So, but you already have those kind of steps in place to make it easy for. I've read that that's a huge issue. I mean, in addition to these other
yeah,
uh, issues with learning, like
yeah,
just understanding how it can all work into your
yeah.
plan and workflow. So you have those kinds of marketing resources available, or do you sell that as an add-on, or is that something that how does that work?
Yeah, so it's pretty easy. With Hydrowave, when they first got the machine, and when I went through the platform of what I do with Shockwave, they said, we're not going to sell a device unless we can support our doctors with service. And so when they buy a device, they get all this training as part of the device, which is a huge value that stands alone. Because when you ask any of the other companies, and I'm sure some of the companies will be listening to this, because it takes years to build this program out, they're going to say, do we have this level of support for our doctors? They have some support, but to the level of what we do things, between all the procedures and slide decks and internal marketing that has worked, that's been vetted, it's all part of your purchase, and nothing else really even comes close. And then what we do is, we don't do the external marketing, but we connect you with external marketing that is a fair price, that yields the leads coming in the door, not just building leads, but leads, quality leads. And I always say a quality lead to me is someone that's a person that is not only has a problem, but has the ability to pay. And those are two important uh, things to consider when you get external marketing. But we connect you with external marketing. They do the external, we do the internal, as well as all the procedures, and support your staff. And it's really why we've had a winning recipe. We really have. It's like, I'm very proud of all my doctors. Every single one of them is like, oh, this is amazing. Miracles happen in the practice. You're building your reputation in the community. I know you said that too, Dr. Joe, and just doing it the right way, with just taking the backpack of stress off these doctors' shoulders. Because if you don't know what you're doing, and you're just sitting there, don't even know where to start, that's a worse feeling as a doctor. It's like, oh man, this is a mountain. How do I climb it? And
Yeah.
I'm just a Sherpa. I've been up the mountain a couple times. I'm in
Mhm.
I'm in Utah right now, just talking to you. I'm looking at mountains. I'm like, I've gone up and down that mountain lots of times to do it the right way. I can show you how each step will make a difference and will get you to the top. So as long as you're, you know, uh, open to direction, and you're coachable, and you're like,
Mhm.
what, I want to help people, then you'll be a fine fit in the Hydrowave community.
And before we ended up really quick, I wanted to check here too, because I'm not sure if we've touched on why you became a chiropractor. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, we talked about miracles, and the miracle thread just keeps going. So I'll tell you really quickly. When I was 6 years old, my dad was in a horrible injury, and they were going to do surgery on his back, and chiropractic saved him from surgery. My dad's now 79 years old, never needed surgery to this point. Just a real blessing. And so that was miracle number one. Miracle number two was I was in an accident in 2016, October 25th, and went to the hospital in a went and laid in the bed, and they were going to do surgery on my back. I'd ripped out all the ligaments in the disc, the posterior longitudinal ligament, discs were all popped on 5, 4, and 3. The back was totally unstable. Didn't feel my legs, was laying there, and I was like, oh, I was like, do I really need surgery? I felt, and it was kind of ironic. A guy that's helped people save them from surgery for 20 years, and now is gonna do the thing that I dreaded the most. The worst evil in my mind. And I went home in a walker after a week in the hospital, and I just prayed a lot, and I said, you know what? Just direct me and help me find a solution for my problem. And I went into stem cell research, found some really good doctors, and got them to inject the disc, the ligaments, and did that with 2 rounds, and then found modalities like shockwave and hydrowave and other modalities that I've done, and healed my back. My back just basically healed from the inside out. So for me, it was very spiritual. I had lost everything, and then all of a sudden, I found my way back to a stronger salvation with the Lord, and then also He just ultimately healed with me doing the work. And so, if I just know if the body can heal from the inside out, and it can adapt from healing, which is our principles of our founding fathers. That was miracle number two. And now I'm just like inspired to help other doctors across the world really help save patients that have been told there's no hope, there's no other alternative, and thinking that man knows more than our higher power. It's just I just don't believe in that. So it's like for me, I've just seen it work, and I'm like, you know what? And if it doesn't, like say if this doesn't work, there's other alternatives, but trust in the body. It is a miracle in itself. And sometimes you just got to ask for a miracle and then you get one. That's what happened to me.
All the glory to God. It is like climbing a mountain, and now you're the Sherpa. You got to show people how to do this, and other. I mean, the whole profession has this huge opportunity with all these modalities, and your hands, of course, and your chiropractic, and that's what was striking about your AK background, because I was like, now all of a sudden you're incorporating all these others, but it's a great fit. Honestly, it's kind of like the next gen, in my opinion. But I'll probably get some hate mail for that from the straight guys. But
Yeah.
I mean, we can't avoid it now. It's
Yeah.
science is it adds to everything. There's science for all these magnetic approaches as well as the laser, and of course the shock wave is just been miraculous in so many ways. Now you have a PDF that listeners can get on how to responsibly add on a modality, right? How would people get that?
Yeah, so what they can do is they'll hopefully we'll put in a link that they can click on that, and we will definitely be happy to send that to them. So if they're considering adding shockwave, into their practice, or they have shockwave that never been able to truly launch it the way that they dream they would, then please reach out, because obviously that I'm here to assist and help and to serve you. That's what I always say is when I treat patients, I said, how can I serve you today? And so it'd be my honor to go ahead and serve our audience, to say, book a call with me, get the PDF. Happy to see if it's a good fit, to see if maybe that's the right modality for you, because it is, this the PDF that you're going to get is basically non-attended and attended, and you got to be able to decide in your philosophy what's going to be the first step into going into more the regenerative energies that we're talking about today. So happy to help. So there'll be a link for a PDF. There'll be a link to schedule a discovery call if you're ready and really need some help and some one-on-one. Those are two things that we'll provide for you.
Perfect. Now, drcurtismartin.com is a website. You can learn more about Dr. Martin. He also offers seminars, I believe, on his technique independently. Hydrowave, what's their website?
Yeah, so Hydrowave, it should be hydrowave.com. I believe
Yeah,
that's
that's it.
I've got one here, hydrowaveregen.com. That's hydrowave, REGEN.com.
there it is. See, I'm more of the implementer. I'm not the advertiser.
No,
So,
no,
thank you.
exactly. But we need that, right? So they have the technology, you have the expertise on that, and if you go to that website, it's very robust and it explains everything behind this approach. And if you're like me as a chiropractor out there, I investigate all these things because I'm just like, man, I want the new angle. I want the angle to get me that edge for my patients, honestly. And just because I don't want to waste their time or my time, or especially not the money, right? But
Yeah.
all of that, right? So, very good. Jaclyn, any final question for the listeners, or Dr.
Well, I
Curtis
think the
Martin,
final
any
question
final
really goes
words?
to Dr. Martin. I was going to say, Dr. Martin, did you have any tagline? This is your last, chance at the mic here. Anything we haven't touched on, you wanted to make sure to tell our listeners?
Yeah, I think it goes back to, we talked about our basis, and I remember when I was a teenager, and I was never great in high school, grades and stuff. And I remember I always saw my dad getting his health back, and I remember I worked at a gas station with 15. I remember pumping gas for this chiropractor, a local chiropractor, and I was always in awe. I thought it was the best profession in the world. And there was something about when I asked him, I said, I'd love to become a chiropractor, but I don't think I'm going to be able to do it. And I remember Dr. Jeffy looked at me and he goes, you know what? If I can do it, you can do it. And there was something about that just resonated that with me. And I was like, it just stuck with me for, now I'm in my mid 50s now. And it's like, even 40 years plus later, it still resonates. And I think that's the last message I would like to leave with the audience, is say, if you're considering something and you're like, maybe I can't do it, I would encourage you that if it sounds good, it sounds like, oh man, this would help so many of my patients. If I
Mhm.
can do this, you can do this.
Well, on that note, thank you very much for joining us, Dr. Martin. Jaclyn Touzard, I'm Joe Busch for TAC Tik Talk. Be sure to follow us for the upcoming podcasts, and thanks for listening.